You're watching the Armored Opinion channel here on YouTube. Please hit the like button if you like my videos, and like this video in particular, and hit the subscribe button to get more like this. I try to bring you clear analysis of American and global politics from the perspective of history, from the perspective of philosophy, from the perspective of people who have been the victims of America. And we're talking about now the events of the past month, focusing, of course, on the January 6th attack on the Capitol, January 6th attack on the Capitol, which the news media has consistently said was the first time that the U.S. Capitol had been attacked since the War of 1812. This is not true. Anybody that knows history knows that in 1954, Lolita LeBron of the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party entered the Capitol in the gallery, and she and her compatriots shot 5 congressmen. They were working for Puerto Rican independence. She was charged and put in jail. Her sentence was commuted. She was given clemency by Jimmy Carter in 1979. How can the reporters for NBC, ABC, CBS not know this? You'd expect the ones from Fox not to know this because they tend not to know a lot of stuff. But the major networks, no, CNN, nobody mentioned it that I heard. They all referred back to 1812 and parroted the same line. How ignorant can they be? You don't believe me? Look up Lolita LeBron. Lolita, Lolita, LeBron, Lebron, on Google search. I learned about her in college because I was a major in the Department of Black and Puerto Rican Studies, with a second major in political science. She was a hero because she was fighting for Puerto Rican independence against American imperialism and colonialism. You know, Puerto Rico it's a colony, as is St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. Yeah, it's called a Commonwealth. They don't have representation in Congress, voting representation. It's a colony, just like Washington, D.C. It's a colony. But the news media parrots a line that is devoid of an understanding of real history. And this is very, very sad, but it also gives the American public a false impression. To say this is the first time the Capitol had been attacked since 1812, the War of 1812, is a lie. Whether you support the attackers or oppose them, to say that the 1954 shootings in the Capitol did not occur, was not an insurrection, is to lie. And that's what the American news media has been doing. I mean, how stupid can you be? And I don't think it's all intentional. I think it's laziness. Americans tend to be lazy. They don't know much about history. and particularly when it's history involving America's colonies and the countries that it is stolen from. As an example, how many Americans know what Manifest Destiny was about? You heard that term in school from elementary school. It was about stealing the land from the indigenous Americans and from Mexico. They teach you the Mexican Cession was a war between the United States and Mexico. The Mexican Cession was a war started by the United States by President Polk. The purpose of the war was Manifest Destiny, specifically to steal the harbors of San Francisco and San Diego to make America a continental nation. Abraham Lincoln, in his first major national speech as a Whig congressman, criticized President Polk at the end of the war for starting the war and lying about it for the purpose of stealing the land. Abraham Lincoln was a Whig congressman. There was no Republican Party back then. Talk about the 1840s. There was no Republican Party. He was defeated in Congress. And he didn't come back to prominence again until the late 1850s, when the Republican Party was formed as an anti-slavery party. But most Americans don't know that. The book that you want to read if you want to learn something about this, and especially for my listeners of Mexican heritage or Hispanic heritage, and for Americans of all stripes, read the book Abraham Lincoln in Mexico. It came out a few years ago. And then you can go along to Google and look up Abraham Lincoln's speech. Look up Abraham Lincoln's speech in Mexico. And hear what he had to say about the United States starting the war with Mexico. It's wonderful to have the internet now. When I was coming up, you had to go to the library and get books out of the library to talk about these things, then learn about these things. Use microfiche and microfilm. You don't have to do that anymore. So I want you to go ahead and look up this information, because you will learn a lot. The news media doesn't tell you the full story. Some people are better than others. Chris Hayes tends to be better on MSNBC. MSNBC tends to be the most informative of the cable networks. But even they don't tell you the whole story. And you have people on there. I mean, they have the most scholars. They have Rachel Maddow. They have Chris Hayes, Lawrence O'Donnell. These are well-educated people. But they don't tell you the whole story, because that's not part of the American narrative. It's not part of American exceptionalism. These type of attacks we saw on January 6th are not an exception. The white nationalists who brought the Confederate flag were not an exception. Understand, there have been a number of attempts to overthrow the U.S. government from within. The first during Washington's time, the Whiskey Rebellion. There were huge rebellions leading up to the Civil War, after the Missouri Compromise, and then the Confederacy and the Civil War. Then in the Tilden Hayes election, as I mentioned last video, in 1876, the South threatened to secede, so the rights of African Americans were sacrificed, and the old Confederates were given back control of the South. Then in the 1880s and 1890s, you had the populist movement, and you had in northern cities rebellions. May Day was an American holiday. We don't celebrate it anymore. We celebrate Labor Day in September. Look up why. Because of the haystack riots in Chicago. I'm not going to go any farther into that. That's something for you guys to look at and comment about in the comments. During the 60s, federal troops had to be sent in the South. University of Mississippi. Before that, to Arkansas to get Governor Abe Fortas to integrate the schools there, to Alabama to escort black children to integrate the schools in Alabama, with George Wallace standing at the schoolhouse door. Remember that these rebellions, not all violent, but these rebellions, and there was violence in each of those times, but not necessarily by government officials. This one is unique in the modern era. Not since the Civil War have we had an open, violent rebellion conspiracy by government officials. We haven't had a violent rebellion led by government officials since the Civil War. This one led by Donald Trump, who told the people to go down to Washington. They knew what he was telling them, and they did it. They stormed the Capitol. You had people in Congress who supported them. Specifically, Senator Hawley, Cruz, and many people in Congress. They knew where everybody's office was. They stormed Pelosi's office, took out the podium. They went into South Carolina Congressman Clyburn's office. They knew where his secret office was, not the one with his name on it, but his private, secure office. They knew. This was insider information. This is a conspiracy that the Republicans are now trying to cover up. We, the American people, have to understand that this type of behavior is American as apple pie. It's no accident that the people who stormed the Capitol had Confederate flags and were white nationalists. We have been fighting white nationalists since the founding of this country. Almost every rebellion in this country, every insurrection, whatever you want to call it, every act of sedition has involved white nationalists. Please study your history. I've left a lot of information out there for you. Put it out there for you in the video. I've left breadcrumbs that if you pick up and follow, you can verify anything that I've said. Please put comments below. You disagree with me? I'd love to enter a discussion with you about this stuff. Again, this is the Armwood Opinion Channel, and I want to remind everybody that resistance is not futile. It was not futile. We defeated President Trump by resisting. We defeated the Republican senators in Georgia, Lochner and Perdue, and now we have two very progressive senators. The first Jewish senator, John Ossoff, who I worked for in his unsuccessful congressional campaign in 2018, and Reverend Raphael Warnock. How symbolic. The man who sits in the pulpit where Martin Luther King and his father preached, Ebenezer Baptist, is a senator now from Georgia. Resistance wasn't futile. Everyone having a good day. Please make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.